So we're over halfway through the season now. We've got an FA Cup 5th round tie to look forward to. Our league form is slowly starting to improve on what we saw before Christmas. But how do some Newcastle fans assess our season? And what I'm going to be talking about on this video is whether what Newcastle are doing right now should maybe have always been expected. If you're curious, Newcastle fans, and I think you might be, do us a favour and make sure you stick around for a lovely little dollop of black and white banter. Welcome back to Black and White Banter, you lovely Newcastle fans. I hope everyone watching this video in the UK is better than the weather. I am looking outside. I've got about to jump on a train and leave the house. 3 trains to get to my mum and dad's, and the weather is pretty grim. But you've got to do what you've got to do to make sure that your parents can look after the dog to go to Nottingham Forest, don't you? The life of a football fan. But yes, I hope everyone watching this video as well, and no matter where you're watching this video from, or who you are, or you know, what your story is or how you landed here watching my face and listening to my awful voice, I still want you to whack a likey, Lou. That goes a very long way. I did mention it on my last video and a little bit more why it's important, and I did get more likes. So do that now as you are hearing me say hit the like button. Hit the like button. Go on. Yes. Yeah, there you go. Yes, and if you like my opinion by the end of this video, whack that subscribe. It's been a weird week. You know, the Luton game's left a bit of a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths. Lots of talk about what needs to change, what can improve. I still don't think last week was all too bad. 4 points in a Cup 5th round place. Players still coming back from injuries. The one that we did see come back score as soon as he came on the pitch and have an instant impact. Joe Willock to come back. Isak to come back in a couple of weeks again. So hopefully we have striking options. I don't think it's that bad. And my last video, the last word, if you haven't checked that one out, goes into a little bit more detail on why and what I thought of the Luton game. So yeah, Nottingham Forest on Saturday. This isn't the match preview though, I'll do that on another one. A game I'm looking forward to, an away day I am looking forward to. A nice short trip up the road, down the road to Nottingham. So what I want to talk about on this video, in case you're intrigued at the start, look, we're over halfway now. What is it? Early February as I make this video. We're still in a cup competition. It would have been nice to be in another one that I think we should have been in the Champions League or the Europa. That was heartbreaking. It would have been nice to be in another one that I think we should have been in, which was the last minute heartbreak of the Carabao Cup against Chelsea. I'm not going to mention what happened and who was responsible for making the mistake, because it does still haunt me a little bit. Oh my God, how did we not make it to that semi-final with Middlesbrough and Fulham? Middlesbrough and Fulham in the semi-finals, no disrespect to either. Little bit of disrespect to Middlesbrough. But yeah, so yes, there's an argument that right now we should be in more competitions than just the FA Cup, and I totally agree. I wanted nothing more than to have another European away day in February to look forward to. It would have been next week. Imagine that. Oh, got another random flight to Spain or Germany or... Oh, I don't even like to think about that. But we don't. What's done is done, as they say. There is no point crying over spilt milk is a term that I use quite a lot because I love milk and I do spill it quite often because I'm a clumsy knob. Pardon the French. So where do we assess the season? Now, some Newcastle fans will see this season... It's not over yet. This is me talking as we are right now and where some fans predict us to be as a bit of a failure. For me, after studying and sitting down and really looking at the numbers and crunching the history books, which I think is important on this, the question I want to put to you watching this video today is Newcastle's season, with things considered that happened from the start of the season to now, maybe exactly where we should be? So let's hopefully put a nice sound effect on that. Let's go back to last season. We defied all odds, didn't we? We were the club to talk about. Maybe you could argue what Aston Villa are doing this season, but they are starting to drop off a little bit, so we'll keep an eye on that. Newcastle were the Champions League qualifiers, the cup finalists. The new regime was working. Eddie Howard got this installed, a bit of class with the likes of Bruno and Botman, but he kept his core with the Wilsons, the Almirons, and it was working a dream. Everybody wanted to watch us play. We were mean as hell in defence. Our back five was one of the best in the country. And everything was going swimmingly, but we defied all odds. You didn't expect us to get Champions League last year. I didn't. The most optimistic pisshead in the Black Garter on a Saturday morning didn't expect us to get Champions League last season. I do not care what anyone says. Nobody did. Maybe European football, with Botman coming in and Isak coming in. Yeah, maybe Europa League, maybe Conference League. That's fine. But what we did last season was incredible. And there is a strong argument that Eddie Howe's biggest downfall going into this season, with other factors dolloped on top, which I'll touch on in a second, was getting that Champions League. And you might say, well, how can success be one of your biggest downfall? Because it happens so fast. And with that in mind, what do the history books say about teams that qualify for Europe, how they do the next season? Well, let's take a look. And this, on a scattergraph, Newcastle fans, I'm telling you, would be all over the place for a number of reasons. So let's go back to a time, can you believe this, a time when FFP didn't exist. Imagine that. Just getting taken over and spending all the money that you can because you can afford to. God, what a crazy thought. So yes, I'm going to mention Manchester City first. Back in 2011, Man City qualified for the Champions League in there for the very, very first time. What did they do the following year? Well, they went on to win the league. Who did they add in that summer? Well, they added a certain Sergio Aguero, a certain Sami Nasri. Money was spent. They kept the core of what was already a very good team the year before, and they went on to do better things. But this was a time when FFP didn't exist, so in previous seasons, Man City had already spent a hell of a lot of that for fun since these owners came in, through the Sven-Goran Eriksson era, all the way into the Pellegrini, the Mancinis. And they did. They went one better. But that goes a little bit against the curve. So let's look at Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur in 2010 qualified for the Champions League. Remember Peter Crouch? Peter Crouch playing in the Champions League in the white of Spurs. How did they do the following year? Well, they stayed in and around the top six. They finished fifth, but they did not re-qualify for the Champions League as some of their fans would have hoped. But what did they do that summer between? They spent a lot of money. Van der Vaart came in. Pienaar came in. There was money spent. There was money spent in that Tottenham team. But they didn't re-qualify for the Champions League. And some Tottenham fans at the time might have called that a failure. Now let's look at teams who've maybe gone a little bit against the grain, a little bit more out the blue. Everton have played in the Europa League. Can you believe that? Yes, that is true. Everton have played in Europe. It was a long time ago now. I remember when it was on Channel 5, I believe. Everton qualified for Europe. They then stayed in and around those European places, but most interestingly with them, again, money was spent, but they also left the competition quite early. So, it's a mixed bag. But the ones that I find really interesting more recently, West Ham, Conference League winners, if you remember, Declan Rice lifting the trophy. They went all the way after dropping out of the Europa, and they went on to do it. Finished seventh that season that they qualified for Europe. Then the European football, game after game after game, all of them fixtures. The following season, the Premier League campaign got sacrificed for 12th. And if you look at teams with Europa in mind, playing Thursday, there is normally a drop-off. And I'm not going to just sit here and rhyme every single team. There's a couple of points I'm trying to make from that. There's a lot of teams have not re-qualified for the same European competition the following year, but most of the teams that have been successful in doing so, who weren't used to European football, have had a hell of a lot of money behind them, because it was in a time when financial fair play, FFP, was just three letters that no one knew what the hell it meant. Probably is an abbreviation for a swear word, which is what I look at it now because it annoys me that much. The bigger teams have dealt with that. Man City were already a high-flying team with fantastic footballers who were not selling at all. Then they go and add Aguero and Nasri. Tottenham spent a fair bit of money but did not re-qualify for the Champions League, and they had that exciting run through the competition in the process. West Ham dropped off massively. Some people were calling for David Moyes, but they went on to lift the competition. All of them fixtures, their Premier League campaign was sacrificed. Now, one thing on this scattergraph of how teams have done who are not used to European football the season after, and like I say, I could have gone on and on and on. One thing they've not had to deal with any of these sides is the injuries that Newcastle have had. So Man City, for example, signing Aguero that summer, he then gets injured. He then gets banned for betting. Newcastle United spent a combined total of 90 million on Harvey Barnes and Sandro Tonali in the summer to lose both players for most of, well, in Tonali's case, obviously, all of the season. Barnes' case, half of the season. That's unheard of, I'm sorry. Look what Barnes did against Luton on Saturday. Look what a baller Tonali is, getting all the way to the Champions League semi-finals in midfield for one of Europe's biggest teams in AC Milan. These are factors that no one could have taken into consideration. So not only are you looking at the history books for how teams have managed to deal with European competition for the first time, and Carabao, and FA Cup, and a more competitive Premier League, can I just say. All of these scenarios I've given you, apart from, you can argue, West Ham, which was more recent, were a less competitive Premier League. Even going back to Chelsea in 2002, 2003, when they first got taken over, they spent whatever the hell they wanted under Roman Abramovich in a time when that was unheard of. You know, Damien Duff, Mattia Kesman, Ian Robben. Their list of signings was crazy. And they did go on to win a title like 2 to 3 years later, after that happened. But that was because you were looking at an era when the competition around you, when you're going to spend that much money, was pretty much Man United and Arsenal were dominating. It felt back then a little bit more like what La Liga and Serie A feel like these days. And Germany more probably is a better example, with Bayern Munich winning it every year, Real Madrid or Barca winning it every year. That's what the Premier League was like back then. Now, it is way more competitive. Everton are risking relegation by spending money. Aston Villa are splashing cash. Tottenham are splashing cash. Liverpool are splashing cash. It's West Ham. I mean, yes, they reinvested the Declan Rice money, but, you know, Paqueta, Alves, Kudos, players just coming in for huge fees. I think they signed that Haller, who was a flop for them, for 40, 50 million. The Premier League is a totally different ball game now. And I get a lot of people watching my videos say, oh, you're positive, you're really positive. And whilst that's a compliment, because it means I'm not a whiny ass complaining and being negative on every single video and slating people, I'm not deluded. And I take some of them comments with a pinch of salt, because I'm not deliberately trying to be positive. I'm looking at things from a bird's eye view as best as possible. And where I think Newcastle are sitting right now, where I do think they will finish strong, with what the history books tell us about teams qualifying for Europe for the first time and having to deal with that new load. But not only that, having a huge, crazy injury crisis, you could even argue, dolloped on top, with Barnes, with Tonali, with Willock being out, Joelinton out for the rest of the season, Isak and Wilson's hamstrings made of cheese. It hasn't helped at all, and I'm not saying Eddie Howe's not made mistakes along the way, how he's managed games against AC Milan in that awful last-minute game. Kieran Trippier's mistake against Chelsea, could we really have ever planned for that? There have been errors along the way, but Eddie Howe is a young manager. Eddie Howe is an obsessed manager. We have an identity and intensity that on our day puts the absolute living shites up the best teams in the country. I'm telling you, and I do believe we'll finish strong. But where Newcastle are right now, on this trajectory, on this 10-15 year plan, in my opinion, is exactly where I would expect us to be. If you'd have said to me at the start of the year, you're going to lose 9 players to injury and go to the quarterfinals of the Carabao, literally push Champions League to the last day, so you're not playing for nothing in the last 2 matches, I would expect us going into February to at least have one cup competition to play for, and maybe a chance of top 7, top 8 by pushing on in the league, which I do think we will. I don't know. Yes, expectations change. Yes, ambitions change when you succeed. That's how a club grows. But with regards to a second full year with the takeover in mind, with Eddie Howe in mind, do I think where we are now is fine and pretty much steady on that upward trajectory? Yes, we've experienced Champions League football. We've got Champions League football in a Premier League campaign. We've been to a cup final. We've learned how to play against some of the Europe's biggest sides. Probably falls into the point I've already made about playing Champions League football. And we could be getting to Wembley again. Could. In a massive, get past Blackburn 1 game away. And we still beating teams on our day. Look how much we pushed Man City recently. Pep Guardiola speaks nothing but highly of us. Sometimes we just need to take a step back, take a breath and realise that things are not that bad. And maybe, just maybe, we aren't doing too bad. And this is exactly what a trajectory looks like. Improving, not league position year upon year, but with experience year upon year and adding good players one by one by one. And I fully expect that to happen in the summer again. Newcastle fans, I'm going to stop rabbiting now. Let me know your thoughts on whether this season has been shocking or whether, like me, you agree that we aren't really, with all things considered and the history books considered, we're not doing too bad. And there's still plenty in February, March, April and May to potentially shout about. And I'm all for that. Let me know down below, Newcastle fans. There'll be a Nottingham Forest match preview coming, and of course there'll be a cheeky little Nottingham Forest match vlog. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely weekend.